Hey, good morning, friends, and welcome to another episode of Team Jesus Outdoors. Hey, guys, today I've got a really exciting episode of Team Jesus Outdoors for you. Today I get to interview one of my lifelong fishing heroes. Today I'm doing a short interview with the legendary Denny Brauer, Hall of Fame angler, 1998 Classic champ, Denny Brauer. Good morning, sir, and thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Good morning. Does that sound appropriate?
Your sound is perfect.
All right.
Hey, I am so excited to have this conversation with you this morning. I've been putting together a video topic for a few weeks now, concerning the state of the affairs of bass today, bass tournament fishing today. I'm one of the guys that are of the opinion that the glory days of tournament bass fishing were the late 90s, despite kind of the popular narrative today. But going back to even 94 when Brian Kirchhoff won the Classic, of course, and then one of the most memorable bass tournaments of all time was your 96 Megabucks event, where you and Jeff McGee went into that fish off because the regular event ended in a tie. But personally, I feel like the glory days of bass fishing was in the 90s. And as I got to tearing into some late 90s tournament mid and late 90s tournament stats, 98 kept coming up because of, I think, all the eyes that were on the bass fishing world in 98. With you being on Letterman that year and you being on the Box of Wheaties, the growth at that time of FLW. I'm a little distracted by your mounts back there. You've got some incredible mounts in the background.
It's a
hobby, sure. Well, it's been a pretty successful hobby, it looks like. You got some elk back there, and what is that, a mule deer also?
There's mule deer, some whitetails, a little bit of everything.
Okay. Hey, but that 98 season was just an incredible season. Not only the Bassmaster Top 150s where you had a great season, obviously you won the Classic that year, but I think what fewer people remember or realize was what an incredible season you had that year on the FLW tour as well. If my stats serve me correctly, you top 10 in 5 of the 6 regular season events and had a 12th place finish that year at the Forest Wood Cup. What was your secret to success in 98?
Oh boy. Once in a while conditions set up right. Once in a while it's scheduling. You're going to lakes that, just kind of play into your strengths, so to speak. And I've always felt that success breeds more success. And I think you can get on those rolls. Everybody refers to it as being in the zone or whatever. But I think there's a lot of truth to that. Your confidence in every move is there. You know when to stay, when to go. It just seems like everything falls into place. The difference between a good year and a bad year can be a lost fish or two. So sure. The game is a fine line between success and failure. And that particular year, and not everything went right. Winning the FLW Angler of the Year, but what a lot of people don't realize is I think I was leading the Bass Angler of the Year going into the last tournament and had a very mediocre tournament and ended up losing Bass Angler of the Year. So,
was that the Louisiana? Oh, excuse me.
There's tournaments we look back as anglers where, it's always the what if. We remember the stuff where we failed more than the stuff where we actually won, because sure. We're always trying to improve.
But on the FLW side, you had a rough event that year too, and that didn't seem to hurt you at all.
No, the rough what spurred me on.
Okay. And you mentioned that you went to a number of lakes that year that played to your strengths, but you did well at a multitude of different venues that year. I mean, from the Potomac River and the Potomac River finish in August, which is where you won on the BASS side. But you had good finishes that year on all over the Tennessee River. Sam Rayburn, you had some Texas finishes that year. So, I mean, it wasn't a matter of fishing the same waters. You did well literally everywhere you went that year.
I think part of the key, if you really look back and analyze it now, looking back to those years, is I was spending a lot of time on the water.
Yeah.
I think both tours was a key. I was also filming my television show for ESPN. So I was continually going from one lake to the other, having to find fish, staying properly tuned up as far as the physical end of fishing. And I think that all plays a part. I think the more time you spend on the water, the more you're in tune with what's happening, and it just gets easier to make those good decisions.
Sure. You built quite the reputation as a jig fisherman. In fact, I think I mentioned this to you in an email, that my favorite piece of bass of fishing literature that I've ever read, and it made a huge impact on my fishing abilities, was your jig fishing secrets book. I read that about 20 years ago.
Yeah, that's been a long time since we put that book together. And as far as the lures, they've changed some for the better. The lines we use are a lot better nowadays, rods and reels, etc. But the basic concept of jig fishing and the so-called secrets of jig fishing, they have not changed. I mean, that mentality that it takes to be a good jig fisherman and doing those little things correctly is what separates people. And of all the different bait categories, I probably have more people approach me about, man, I just cannot catch fish on a jig. That is my least favorite bait because I have no success on it. And I can understand that to a certain extent because some people do not have the patience and the mentality to slow down enough to get those bigger bites. And that's really what jig fishing's about. You got to be prepared to have those 5-bite days. And some people want more action than that. So, that's fine. Every different strokes for different folks.
So with the diversity of water that you fished in 98, how many of those diverse water, if you recall, how many of those diverse bodies of water did a jig play a big part of your success in 98?
Oh boy, I can kind of look back, I guess, at some of the wins from that year. And the Lake Russell win, I guess, was the first one. I won 4 tournaments in a 5-tournament stretch. And at the Lake Russell one, it was a spinnerbait. I caught one big fish on a jig. The rest were on an offshore spinnerbait spot, a vibrating lipless crankbait, caught a few. So there's like 3 different baits played into that, but the spinnerbait was the main bait in that particular wind. And we left there and went to the Neuse River, and I caught them the first day on a jig. I caught some the second day on a jig. Then I transitioned to a buzz bait, and I caught some on a buzz bait. Then I went to a weedless spoon, caught a few doing that. And whenever they'd blow up on the weedless spoon and miss it, I'd pitch a jig into the hole they left in the vegetation. And I caught my 2 biggest fish doing that. And then right before I came in the last day, I caught a good fish on a spinnerbait and ended up winning that event, I think by 2 ounces. So it was kind of a combination of baits. In other words, I didn't have anything going. I was in scramble mode the whole event. And then, of course, the Classic, I'd found those fish when we had our pre-fish period on a jig. And when we come back a month later for the actual tournament, I couldn't get them to eat the jig, but I found that I could get them to eat a tube. So I started to flip a tube in place of the jig. And I think virtually all the fish I weighed in were on the tube, except for maybe one on a jig in the Classic. And then the first event after the Classic to start the new year was that Potomac River tournament you're referring to. And the first day of that event, I caught them flipping the tube. and then we had a flood tide, and I caught them on a spinnerbait over the lily pads. The next day, I caught some on a crankbait. And then the final day, I went back to the jig and went to a ledge and ended up winning the tournament with the jig.
So why will fish eat a tube on those days when they won't eat a jig?
I don't know. I think it maybe has a little bit to do with the 4-H, what's in the area. I think what happened, as an example in the Classic, I didn't see any shad in that area at all when I was there practicing. But a month later, when we come back for the actual event, there was a lot of shad on that flat right out in front of where those wood lay down targets were. And I think they maybe made the transition from crawfish to shad, and that the tube maybe put out more realistic pressure waves like what a shad would. But I really don't know. And I think sometimes it's just how aggressive they are. When they're aggressive, they like a bulkier bait. When they're a little bit more pressured and subdued, they might want, a stealthier bait like a tube. So there's a lot of things about fishing where we'll never know the little bitty answers. But all we got to really know is if they're not wanting one bait, maybe we ought to give them another bait.
Right. If I recall correctly, you were fishing a black tube there too, right?
Correct, a black neon tube. The water was fairly dirty, and you really needed something that the fish could see.
Okay. Huh. As a northern angler, I mean, the tube just comes natural to me. That's what I cut my teeth on, but I still found it very difficult. And in fact, that's why I picked up and read your Jig Fishing Secrets book, is it took me forever to transition from those tournament Texas rigged plastics to being able to catch fish on a jig.
Well, one of the issues people also have with a jig is they get hung up a lot more, and they're not willing to go into the cover because of that. And you got to, remain aggressive with a jig. You learn how to fish it. Use the correct jig with a proper weed guard. If you're set up right with the right equipment and you learn how to finesse that bait through the cover and you try to put it in the nastiest places you can find, you're going to have success. The problem with a jig versus, say, a tube or a worm, you feel that tap, tap. A lot of times with a jig, it's a lot more subtle than that. It's just some pressure, a little extra weight, and you've got to learn when to set the hook, when to, finesse it to the cover without jerking at everything the jig touches. So it's a learning process.
Hey, one of my favorite TV shows of all time, fishing TV shows of all time, was that series you ran. It looks like you only ran it for about a year, and that was that Schooled by Denny Brauer.
We did a Schooled by Denny Brauer for 2 years. I did 6 years of bass class for ESPN, and then we decided it was time for a change. So we did the Schooled by Denny Brauer for 2 years, which was a very expensive show to produce because we were bringing in people and filming them, and then I would race their water, and we'd film me, and then we'd have to also go to the studio and put it all together. The 3-process show. So we did that for 2 years, and then we transitioned to another show called Bass Battles that I did with my son for 2 years.
Was that why the Schooled show didn't go on to a third season? Was just the expense of producing that?
I think that was part of it. We'd been on an 8-year run on ESPN, and they decided to change their outdoor block around some. I'm sure that played a part. The fact that we were starting to see a transition of TV dollars becoming harder to obtain as far as selling sponsors. So there was different things that played a part.
Those ESPN days, and then even before that, the TNN days, where the fishing programming block on TNN. Then like you mentioned, there was late 90s and well into the 2000s. There was a big block there on ESPN. And today, I think serious guys get more excited about the live coverage. But with all of that coverage and mid 80s through the 2000s, why does it seem like we're not why does it seem like we're not growing the sport more than we are?
That's a good question. It's totally changed. Social media has obviously changed the game. It's easier for people to just get online and find information, find a YouTube video of how to do this or how to do that. Why aren't there all the boat show seminars and that going on? Why aren't there as many boat shows? Well, it's a different learning system, so to speak.
Sure.
I remember the road doing 40 to 60 days a year, traveling around the country, teaching people how to fish with the seminars, the Bass universities, etc.
Yeah.
And you don't see it's a whole different deal out there. And Major League Fishing has still got a lot of television going on the outdoor channel, so that there's that. But outside of that, it's hard to find a whole lot.
And with the new format, I guess starting last year, the ESPN format with B.A.S.S, you've got the tournaments being covered through the morning hours on ESPN, and then live on the internet afterwards. But you mentioned the boats, though, and I think that's part of the problem. Is I think that we've largely priced a lot of the guys out of the industry. The last new bass boat I bought was in 2004. 2004, you could still get a tournament ready bass boat for under 40 grand. We're well over double that now.
Yeah, I look back when I started. I started with a 12-foot John boat with a little trolling motor that I think we paid $87 for the boat, and threw it in the back Woody Wagon Suburban and went to the lake. We didn't have a lot of money invested.
Right.
But I saved my money for a few years, and I went from that to a brand new Ranger. And I want to say that was in 76 or 78. And that whole rig, boat, motor, trailer, and with a couple of Humminbird units on it, I had like $5,800 in it. That was brand new.
Yeah.
Now, just put another $100 grand in front of that $5,800.
Exactly. Exactly.
And
you don't have to go that far back either. I bought my first new boat in 96, spring of 96. And in spring of 96, you could buy not tournament ready boat, but you could buy a 17-foot, Javelin had that Ricky Clun edition 17-footer. You could, the average guy could go get him a brand new bass boat in the mid 90s, ready for his weekend tournaments for 10 grand.
Yep.
So here we are 30 years later, and it's 10 times more money.
Yeah, I mean, a fully rigged boat nowadays with the electronics we have and the trolling motors, etc., you're looking at 100 grand and more, yeah. Which is that's incredible. I'd have never envisioned that. I think I paid $25,000 for my first house, right. So things have got way out of proportion.
The $10,000 I spent on that boat in 96 won't buy your electronics today.
No, they really.
If you're running 4 graphs and a good trolling motor, you're at the $15,000 price before you put it on a boat. Yeah,
that truly has priced a lot of people out of the game, but it's also added a lot of excitement to the game for people that can afford it. I mean, I look at trolling motors with a spot lock, etc., that we have with the Minn Kota right now that you don't know how to get by without this stuff. It makes life so on the water. And I don't fish every day. Obviously, I hunt some, but I do fish a bunch. And you really learn to appreciate some of that stuff that you are paying the extra dollars for. You look at the electronics nowadays. God, it makes the job so much easier to find fish. Do you need it to be as good a fisherman now as you used to be in order to put fish in the boat? That can be argued forever. Sure. There's a lot of technology there that is kind of a shortcut to success.
I'm definitely not an anti-electronics guy, because even though I don't fish tournaments anymore, I can't even imagine going back to the electronics we had just 20 years ago.
Yeah, the advances have been immense, and they're going to continue to be. What we're using now will seem pretty obsolete probably 10 years from now.
Yeah.
It'll probably get to where you're looking at a TV screen in your boat, seeing exactly what's happening.
Right. Well, I'm an ice fisherman too, and we do that now. You know.
Yep.
We drop that AquaView camera down below the hole, and you know, you don't wonder, is that a bluegill that just come up to my jig, or is it a pike? You know.
And that works with an isolated area ice fishing,
Yeah.
but when you're down bass fishing, we don't need that hanging down.
Although Panoptics is not much far off from that, right?
No, it really isn't. I look at the 360 imaging that Humminbird has that I have on my boat, and it's scary. I mean, you see every rock, every pebble, every clump of hydrilla where it sits out from other clumps, and it sure makes it a lot easier to put your cast in the right spot.
So besides the fact that a boat costs double what it did 15 years ago, entry fees are double or triple what they were in the late 90s. And yet a guy doesn't make no more money today than, very little more money than you guys were making in the late 90s.
That's the sad part of the sport. It's really regressed as far as the opportunity for people to make money.
Sure.
That's why the guys scrambling on social media to try to keep some type of sponsor base together where they can get some cash flow, because it's hard unless you're one of a few that can really be consistent to actually make money off tournament winnings. You got to supplement that income, and it's more expensive to be on the road. Tow vehicles are higher. Gas has gone absolutely crazy now. Everything you look at, it's going to cost you more, but yet the return is going to be less, and that's just not right.
Right. So if the if the angler, things aren't better today for the angler than they were late 90s. I would argue things aren't better for the fans today than they were late 90s, with the exception, obviously, of the live stuff. That is pretty cool. But still, I think it's tougher for the fan to get in at the grassroots level. So I don't know who's doing better today than they were 30 years ago. Maybe other than the big industry companies making the money at it, because it sure isn't the guy entering it's not the guy entering the big event, and it's not the guy entering the weekend event.
Yeah, there's always going to be the haves and the have-nots, no matter what level or what direction the sport's heading. But I think when you look back into the time frame you were referring to earlier in the show, the 90s, that was a huge growth period. Yeah. I got started in sport in 1980, and there wasn't any money to be had in the sport in 1980 either.
Sure.
You're going to go broke if you tried to fish for a living in 1980. It had to be something you did in between your regular job, so to speak. In 84, and I think that's when I won my first Bassmaster event, was the same time the sport became televised. Right. And once it became televised, TNN, that's when you saw the sport become elevated, and suddenly you saw the purses start to jump because sponsors wanted to be part of that, put more money into it, and you could make more money. And you had that whole growth period from 1890, from 84 all the way through the 90s, where the viewership kept growing, more people started to get involved. There was a lot of excitement in the sport. A lot of heroes were developed that people could follow. And I think that was part of it. And then after you get to a certain point, things started to stagnate. The purses got way up there, and I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden they went the other way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunate. It was, like I said, those just seem like the glory days. I mean, there was a few years there where the FLW Cup was paying $500,000.
There was actually some $1 million events. So,
yeah,
it was crazy. I've had people a lot of times, don't you wish you were fishing right now full time? And I go, no way. I wouldn't change a thing. I just love the era of the sport that I was able to participate in. I just thought it was so exciting, so wonderful, and to see it grow the way it did and have the fan base we had. I mean, that was pretty rewarding.
Yeah. You know, you hear some people talk about the difference in competition levels in the different generations of bass fishing. And I'm not sure that I see a difference really. I mean, you know, today, I guess the difference is that you get the young guys come in out of college that already have a lot of experience that it took years to develop, maybe in the 80s and 90s. But it seems like I don't know if there's any one generation that stands out as, hey, competition was tougher during this period than it is in this period. It seems like at least after 1980, things have been relatively consistent as far as that goes. I mean, the field's just always been tough.
Yeah, I think it always is. You know, it's competition. People are going to get out, try to be number one. They're going to be out there giving it everything they have. The learning curve obviously is shortened nowadays.
Yeah.
You look back in the early days of bass fishing, the guys that were most successful were the guys that were fishing guides.
Right.
Why were they successful? They spent so much time on the water learning all the techniques.
Yep.
Now, as you referred to with social media, these guys, they know all that before they ever get
Sure.
to the trail. Plus, you got high school fishing, you got college fishing,
Right.
you develop skills at an earlier age. Does that make them a better angler once they get out there? Probably at the beginning, it may, but in the long run, it still comes down to intuition. Who's got the most fire in their belly? Who's going to work the hardest, get up the earliest, stay out there the latest? There's going to be guys nowadays that are really good at certain things, and there's going to be other guys that are going to be better at other things. And, you know, if a tournament sets up for a live scoper, he's going to do well. If it sets up dirty water for somebody on the bank and heavy cover, he's going to do well. So conditions and scheduling still dictate to a certain point who's going to be successful. But my best advice now to a young angler is, you know, try to be as versatile as you can. But always remember this, if you're going to win tournaments, you got to be a little bit better than the majority of the field at something. Right. So find strength you really like, and when it gets right for that strength, the opportunity to win is going to increase a bunch.
That's great advice. It's crazy to think that there will be a couple of guys fishing in the Classic next month that weren't even alive when you won the Classic in '98.
Yeah, I'm starting to get a little age on me. And also some of these guys are getting in awful young. So it's kind of common to do. I was watching Bass Live a little while ago. They have a tournament on the Harris Chain going on.
I was watching this morning also.
And I don't even know these guys, you know, but I watch them fish, and some of them are excellent anglers. So it's going to evolve. It always does. So
I want to be very respectful of your time. I don't want to keep you much longer, but is there anything that comes to your mind? What can we do differently to grow the sport? Do we need to put more eyes on the sport?
I think all sports cycle. I think the sport has really grown because of the pandemic. I think maybe not tournament fishing itself, but the sport of fishing in general, because a lot of people wanted to get away, had to get away.
Sure.
You saw people fishing. You couldn't find a used boat to buy. They were all being snatched up.
Right.
I think, you know, the one bright thing that did come out of the pandemic was it put more people outdoors, and they found a love for the outdoors, whether it's hunting, fishing, camping, or whatever. And that's all going to transition down the line to more people being interested in the sport of fishing. That said, it also puts more pressure per acre on our fisheries, which means we got to do more to keep them top notch, or people are going to lose interest. If you're not catching fish, a lot of the fun of that sport leaves. So I think it's going to be real important that And I know this isn't going to happen, but man, it'd sure be nice if we were seeing more reservoirs built, more lakes built, more opportunities to spread that fishing pressure out. And that in itself would grow the sport.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, sir, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you coming on with me today for a few minutes. And so you're down there in Amistad, right?
Correct.
Yeah. How's that fishery these days?
It's really been terrible here lately. The lake is 48 feet low. The whole Rio Grande Valley, Falcon Lake, Lake Amistad is really hurting for water. We're in a severe drought. And until we get water, we probably are going to have a pretty tough fishery. Once these lakes come up, they flood into that new growth, and then they're going to be good for several years. And this was the best lake in the world when I moved down here, and it's probably one of the worst right now just because of that. But, all lakes cycle, and the good thing about it is even though you might not be getting a lot of bites out here, you still have an opportunity to catch a 15, 16-pound fish. So that keeps it pretty exciting for me.
Well, hey, I'll let you get back to that Harris Chain event. And again, I so thank you for coming on today. I wish you all the best. God bless.
Well, I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Have a great day, sir.
You too.
So, hey, I know the vast majority of the subscribers to Team Jesus Outdoors are walleye guys. But I know that we also have a bunch of bass fishermen that occasionally pop in and watch the channel. I hope you guys really enjoyed this. Denny Brauer has just long been one of my bass fishing heroes. Following his career was just a lot of fun. His TV shows were the most entertaining fishing TV shows out there. I garnered a ton of information from his Jig Fishing Secrets book. It was just a pleasure to be able to speak with Denny today. But guys, I hope you enjoyed this show. Please make sure to click that like button. Please make sure to subscribe if you're not already subscribed. And check out some of our other Team Jesus Outdoors videos. God bless, tight lines. We'll see you guys on the water.